All right, so I'm going to show you guys what I got here. I'm got my camera. I hope this is a decent enough view. It doesn't look that great. But I do have a Sega Genesis here, if you can see, right here. And it's got this special cartridge in it. And it has this little chip here that plugs into the controller port, and out of it comes a USB cable that I've got going into my computer. And I'm going to share my screen now. There's really not much to see here. I got the output from the headphone jack on the Genesis, and this is plugged in here, and that's it. There's no screen. There's no like visual interface to look at. But let me just share my screen quick because I want to show you guys just a little bit about what I'm doing here. Got this Wikipedia page. So the Genesis and the Mega Drive come with this Yamaha YM2612 chip. That generates most of the sounds. It's actually an FM synthesizer with 6 channels. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and each channel has 4 operators, kind of like Operator in Ableton. So there's 4 different, I guess, like oscillators that you can use to modulate each other. And I think there's 7 or 8 different algorithms you can use. Maybe I think it's 8. So if you know, like on Operator, I'll just bring this out real quick here. Operator has 4 different operators. You can set to different waveforms and change the envelope time of them. And then you've got also the algorithms, which show how these different operators interact with each other. So it does drastically change the sound. I'm just going to turn these up a little bit without any idea what it's going to be.
I got to bear it.
Right here. Let's see. So this is Operator we're hearing right now. And these all interact depending on the different algorithms you have. It changes the tone, and you can tune it. You know. Operator also allows you to use all these different waveforms. So you can put a square wave here. You can change that up to all different kinds of stuff. And it changes the tone quite a lot, especially depending on how your algorithm is. So the Genesis is pretty similar, except you don't get to choose the waveform. It's always a sine wave. And you do get to affect the envelope of each operator, and you get to affect the algorithm. Maybe I'll just bring this back up to me here. Hello, here I am. And the way this is kind of written out, I've got this this device here that communicates with the Sega Genesis. So this is up. I might put like a link out to everyone for this if you want to learn about the Genesis sound chip here, the FM sound chip. There's actually another chip in there too, called the Texas Instruments whatever. And this is a square wave generator. So it does have like kind of like those old school square wave like Nintendo sounds in there too, which gives you, I think, a total of 10 different channels of sound. One of them, I think, is a noise generator. I could be wrong about that exact number, but there's quite a lot of sound you can get. I think you can do some samples too. But right now, I'm really just focusing on this YM2612. In the future, I plan on sampling this one here that's also inside the Genesis that you can access. I wonder if I can maybe just quickly let you hear that. That would be under my hardware, so they call it the DAC strip. So let's put this in here. Turn that on. Now, I'm not exactly sure what channel. I think I can go to anything, like go over here. Now, this is not the focus of our talk, so I didn't have this set up, but Oh, I'm getting sound here. Let's go back over here. Alright, so this is actually the noise channel on the Genesis. All kinds of crazy noises. And I think... Where are we? I just heard it for a second. Okay, it's a higher octave. It doesn't go very low. So this is just like very square wavy kind of sound. And it's very similar to what you might even hear on old school, even older generation systems. So I have plans on sampling that and the noise channel in the future. And I'll probably actually make this 16-bit pack expanded, where it'll have those sounds in the future. And that will, of course, go out to the club. So the way I'm accessing this chip is with this device called the Gen MDM, which is just this little thing here that plugs into your Sega Genesis, and it comes with the little cart that I have here. It offers you like this, you can do MIDI through the 5-pin regular jack that goes into a little 1/8" jack, or you can use USB MIDI. A little tiny thing. I guess that's like some kind of cat, like looks like some kind of mountain lion or something. But this sends all the MIDI information into the Sega Genesis sound card. Pretty cool little thing. I don't know if you guys listen to the podcast at all, but I did a podcast with a guy named Remute. And what he did is, using this Gen MDM, he made an entire album on the Sega Genesis that is loaded onto an actual cart, an actual Genesis game cart, or Mega Drive, I guess is what he's using. But I think it's compatible. And it's a whole album of songs made entirely on the Sega Genesis sound card. It's super cool. Definitely worth checking out, just if you're into game music at all. And the way he talks about it is great. I mean, he really had to overcome quite a lot of challenges to make this work. And since I spoke to him, actually, too, he has an album he came out with on the, I think this is it here. No, maybe. This one is for the Super, is this the one for the Super Nintendo? No, that's the Nintendo DS. He did one for the Super Nintendo also, which is another insane feat. So, you know, he's doing some really cool stuff if you're into, like, game music. He's, like, doing the modern stuff. But he used this, the Gen MDM, and that's where I heard about it, was through him. So, this person named Little Scale, years back, made some of these Max for Live devices that help you communicate with the Sega Genesis. So I've got it set up now where this track is sending MIDI to the Sega Genesis, and this track is listening to it. This is an audio track, just listening. And what you're hearing now is actually the Sega Genesis generating these sounds that I'm playing on my push. And let me, if I can get you a sound maybe that has a little more of a tail. If you listen really close, there's like some nice buzzing, especially when things fade out. Like, it's not a smooth volume fade. That's the 16-bit aspect of these sounds. There's just not enough bit depth to get those smooth volume fades. And if you use a device in Ableton like Redux on a sound, let's see if, again, I should probably left that operator open. We'll bring it back in here. On there, and then we'll go grab that Redux from this track. You can sort of get that sound a little bit. Nice long release. If I bring this down, especially when I get to like 8 bits, it's similar. Really started noticing it around 8. So like things don't fade out smoothly, and that's what's happening on the Genesis. 16-bit. It doesn't have that resolution to give you the nice smooth fades. So you have control over your different operators here, and you can kind of hear as I adjust these volumes, it changes the tonality of the sound a bit. And as I change the algorithm, I'll just crank these all up a bit. As I change the algorithms, we get different types of sounds. This sound right now sounds very Sega Genesis to me. If you've played that system before. Funny sound right there. Like classic. So to make this pack, as you can see, like programming using these controls it's not exactly a joy, I would say. It's a little difficult. And fortunately, you can load in patches from games. So they have these files called TFI files. And somebody somewhere on the internet loaded all of these different video games from the Sega Genesis library in here. And you can basically, I'm going to go to like one of my favorite soundtracks, which is Streets of Rage 2. Which is, it's like techno music, that soundtrack. It's so cool. You can open this up here, and what this does is load all of the presets from that game into here. So it has basically like the different sounds of the game, like the bass sound, the, you know, whatever, the lead sound. So this is a sound from the game. We can load a different one. Some nice movement in that sound. It really evolves over time. A lot of these sounds do that. It's got like a bit of noise in the beginning, and then kind of smooths out a little. And these are just the individual sounds from Streets of Rage 2. Pretty interesting. And there's a ton of them. So to make this pack, I went through some of the games that I loved and grabbed some sounds that I thought were cool and sampled them, and then built them into the different instruments. I got those all inside the group. And sometimes funny things happen like this. The Genesis just makes noise sometimes when you do things, and then it doesn't ever seem to want to stop making that noise. I hit the reset button there, and that might let it go away. But in this group, I've got all of these different instruments. I made 60 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, the pack has 60 sounds right now. As I said, I still want to get into the sample channel, and I want to get into that DAC channel with the square wave. So I think you can expect an update somewhere down the road to get even more sounds with that. There's just so much depth to this particular chip that, you know, I just kept going. I kept sampling new sounds and having so much fun with it. So maybe I'll just mute all these other tracks, because we'll get into the pack now. I've got the presets folder here in my places, and they're all labeled BF 16-bit. And then the names they all are derived from the game that I used in the sound. So, like Altered Beast Grave, like one game that I always loved from the Sega Genesis was Altered Beast. One of the early games, some great sounds in there. So I'm just naming them after characters or game titles or some sort of element from the game. I got Earl from Toe Jam and Earl, so there's a sound in there. Echo the Dolphin, Golden Axe. So you might, if you are person that's played these games, you might recognize some of these things, like Robotnik is the bad guy in Sonic the Hedgehog. And here's the pack. Here's the rack, I should say. And they're all basically the same. And I should also mention that there is an audio effect here, right in here, the 16-bit FX, and it's a bit crusher, so you can like reduce the bit rate. You can have a chorus, a delay, and a phaser. And I just felt like these effects sounded nice on top of these Genesis sounds. So let's see. Let's pick. This one's just called Cartridge. I'm going to open it up. We'll let you hear it. And I'm not playing those sounds, right? It's muted, but okay. So right now, everything's just simpler. If you wanted to go inside and see what it looks like as a sampler, you can just right-click here and see the different samples. So each sound has 3 or 4 different samples, and they're looped usually. And let's see, so we're hearing this sound here, right there, and we have some control. So you kind of get the sound as they were originally, and then there's also some sounds that are like kind of modified, but we can control the attack, say, to like give ourselves like some kind of fade in like a pad. We can bring that back down, we'll bring the release down, the sustain down, and the release is affecting actually the decay and the release at the same time. So this is a good way to make little pluck sounds. If you hold that all the way down, you get this nice long sustained tone, but then we got our sustain to control the volume when you hold down the pads. To kind of further Genesis up the sound to make it sound more like that chip already, I put in the FM oscillator in sampler, and that's the FM amount and FM pitch. So we can take this sound and start adding in some frequency modulation. Which to me makes it sound even more Genesis-like. And we've got 2 controls. We've got the pitch of the... And those are controls you would have on the Genesis as well. You really get a lot of variation playing around with that. And the decay is how long that frequency modulation lasts. You can see that envelope moving as I control that knob. So you can use this to have like really short amounts of frequency modulation in the beginning of a sound. So that gives us that kind of interesting like beginning sound. It almost sounds like a breath of air. Or we can make it last a little longer. All the way up to 60 seconds. Which will give it a nice slow fade out. And this way your sound is sort of evolving over time. Over a long time, over a whole minute in this case. Or again, something nice and short. So that is a nice way to really change up the sounds, give you some more variety. And there's the filter. So I've got a filter here. There's no filter on these sounds on the Genesis. So you kind of get what you get. You can't really do filtering, but I thought this helped give you a lot of control over the sounds. So we've got control over the filter here. It's a low-pass filter. And this can be a nice thing to combine with the frequency modulation, because a lot of times what the frequency modulation is doing, and I'm going to bring in an EQ8 to show you, is adding a lot of high frequency content to the sound. So we can kind of watch that happen. We'll make this filter wide open here and bring the FM down. And as I see, you can really notice it in the very high area. And since I have a short envelope of just about 1.5 seconds, you can see it start and kind of fade out. If I raise that, those high frequencies last a little longer. But there is a lot of movement going on in those upper registers. Now when you start combining that with a filter, you can see where I'm taking out some of that high stuff. Bring it back in. It's real drastic. So just using those parameters, I feel like you get quite a lot of different sounds out of it. And then there's the FX part. So each one of these also has an FX section. So maybe I'll just clean this sound up. I'll bring this down all the way, give us a longer release. I'll make that, so this is kind of the way the sound came out of the Genesis. And now we'll go into our effects. We can add some bit crushing. I love that. I think there's something magical about the way the bit crush works on these frequency modulation sounds. Especially if I crank up some of that FM. It makes me feel like I'm getting sucked inside like this chip. I'm like in this like digital world here. You can get some cool effects with it. We've got the chorus. Space things out a little bit. You can even go into the extremes. And that just gives you some wild stuff, but I think in subtle amounts. I'll turn it off and bring it in. It really opens up in my headphones. I think you should be able to be hearing this in stereo on Zoom. But it makes the sound much wider and kind of gives it a little bit of a sparkle. Got the delay with control over the delay time and the feedback. And again, like what I like about having this effect is the Genesis doesn't have delay, it doesn't have reverb or anything, but this gives us kind of like an alternative. So we can add space to the sound, make it fit in our mixes a little better. I've got the delay in here set to repitch mode so that you get those fun pitch movements as you turn the delay time around. And the reason that works that way, it's just to emulate old tape delays. The way delays used to work, it used to just be a loop of tape, and you'd be recording right onto that loop. And if you wanted the delay to go faster, you sped the tape up. So that meant as you sped up the tape, whatever was already on there started getting higher in pitch. And if you lowered the speed, it would drop in pitch. Then we got just a phaser. I just like the way the phaser worked. I don't always use phaser too often, but it just sort of sounds really nice, I think, on these FM sounds here coming out of the Genesis. So if I got my phaser cranked up, I'll go back into here and add some of that FM. It just sort of emphasizes the movement, because these sounds have a lot of movement naturally as the different operators interact with each other. And the phaser just kind of brings that out a little. Combine that with a little chorus. Delay in and the bit crushing. So I find myself getting lost in these sounds pretty quickly. That's just one of the sounds as we go through. This one is called Ninja Stars. I think I got this one out of Shinobi, the game where you're a ninja running around, which has a great soundtrack too. I really think like a lot of these sounds work nicely, like almost like effects, especially this metal vibration. To me, this sounded like, sounds it's just so metallic. Almost like works like a string or like a feedback sound. I might couple this with a bit of delay, which I think it looks like I already have. We could even smooth out a little bit of that crunchiness with the filter. See if I can. There's some of these in here. I'll find you one that have like. This sounds like one of them. This one's called Blaze. It's from Streets of Rage because one of the characters you can choose in Streets of Rage, her name is Blaze. Let's see here. Okay, so this is something I've had a lot of fun with this pack on certain patches. If you listen, there's a lot of movement to this. It almost sounds like, maybe not quite an arpeggiator, but there's stuff moving. And that's happening because on this envelope here, I've got it set to loop on the beats at every quarter note. So if I were to just like put the click on, we're moving this shape for the volume with the quarter notes. So if I made this like really short, we've got this kind of like repeating pluck sound. And depending on like when you press the pads in this case, they don't sync to the beat, they just repeat at quarter note intervals depending on your tempo. So we could slow them down with the BPM or speed them up. It's kind of fun. So all the envelopes in Sampler anyway have this looping function. Normally there's none. You just get this envelope to go once and it affects the volume. But you can set it to loop, like once it reaches its end, so it's about half a second here, it will loop again, or you can set it with the time here. Beat is useful for just getting it to repeat every quarter note, but it's not like synced with the timeline or the metronome. It's just at the BPM of 112, a quarter note time, whatever that actual amount of time is. Sync should be in time with the playhead here when it's playing. And then we got trigger, which will trigger this. So there's some other ways, some different ways you can play around with the envelopes. And what makes this particular sound kind of interesting is the fact that this envelope is looping. So it gives it all this motion. I've also got the same thing going on the filter. So the filter envelope is at work here. Maybe turn that off for a second. Now I'll turn it back on. So what this is doing is starting the filter up at a much higher spot than it's at visually and bringing it down at about half a second, a little more than half a second, but it's repeating on sixth notes. So it's giving us this kind of polyrhythmic thing, I guess we would say, with the quarter notes here on the amplitude envelope, and then the sixth notes on the filter. We could, if we played around with this, we can get like different sounds. You hear the things moving, and you can do whole bars. So every bar, the filter like opens again. By combining all this, you can get some crazy sounds. You can do the same thing with the frequency modulation. So if I turn this up, let's bring this down. This is kind of quick. I could have this loop, say the beat again. Oh, we got Animus is here. Awesome. Welcome to the show, Animus. So this envelope now on the frequency modulation is repeating every bar, which gives us that kind of like metallic stab every once in a while. You know, just crank it up so you can really hear it. Play one note, so it might be easier. Every bar, you get that kind of like noisy metallic sound. And this filter envelope is moving on quarter notes, and this one's also moving on quarter notes. So maybe we'll just change this. Maybe we'll do this like thirds. So we're getting all kinds of different movements using our envelope. And that's happening in certain ones, certain different sounds of here. Not everything is using that feature, but just where I kind of wanted to have a little fun with it. Let's see what we got here. This one has its own arpeggiator built in. You can control the rate. And then it's going up an octave because I have the steps at 1 and the distance at 12. So this one is going up an octave. I'm just playing one note, but we get that octave. We can bring it down to just no octave. Or 3 even in this case. Smooth out the beginning a little bit. So with all these sounds, you can really take them to another level just by turning a few knobs really quickly. And let's see. I think those are some of the main features going on here. You know, some of them have a couple extra devices in there just to kind of give you a little more color and diversity to the sounds. But I found it kind of difficult to know where to stop with this pack because there's just so much depth on these sounds coming out of the Genesis. I kept sampling them, and then after I'd sampled them, a couple turns of the knobs and I've got an entirely new sound. It was very easy to just make a new preset out of it. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. You might start with this sound here, which seems to have a lot of frequency modulation and it's at a kind of high pitch. If I just drop that down to 0.5, I could even add some attack here. Maybe filter it down a little bit. chorus, maybe some delay for fun. What the hell, a little bit crush for noise. I'm just turning in a little bit of everything. A little more release. And now we're at an entirely different sound than we started with. This one is from a game called Hellfire, which I don't think was a particularly good game, actually. But it has a lot of really cool sounds in it. So I went into the sounds there on the Sega. Again, it was pretty easy to just kind of go inside here. And I can load sounds from pretty much any game that I have on this collection of TIF patches and load them in. That's more or less the pack. Quackshot, that was a fun game of Donald Duck. So I didn't go into this one in the pack, but let's just hear what some of these sound like. We go to the final boss. Again, just a lot of diverse sounds. And right now we're hearing sounds right out of the Genesis here. Something I have noticed by going through these, it sounds like they reuse a lot of, this is like a drum sound almost. They reuse certain sounds in different parts of the game, which is kind of interesting. So they kind of have like a palette. A lot of noise for that one. Duckburg. It's a very interesting sound chip, and it's really fun for me to combine these sound chips, you know, with the sound of the Genesis. I'm sorry, the sound of Ableton Live, adding some delay, adding some effects, frequency modulation, all of this stuff that we can do to make it just so this one, while we're at it, what I did here is I've got the velocity set all the way at max, so we start at 127, highest velocity, and then the arpeggiator is set to reduce the velocity or decay the velocity with this over 3.3 seconds to the target of 0. So what that is basically saying is we're going to start all the way at the highest velocity, and over 3 seconds we're going to go down to 0 velocity while we're arpeggiating and 30-second notes that are moving down 2 octaves. So it gives us this kind of like dropping sound. So I could see this particular sound. This is called Echo because this sound was sampled from Echo the Dolphin. I could imagine this being some sort of like transitional sound to kind of like, maybe instead of like a cymbal splash or a white noise kind of thing. Something like that to punctuate chord changes or section changes. Make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat here. Cool. So I think that about covers it, more or less. There's a lot to explore here. A lot of fun to be had. I don't know if anyone in the Zoom, if you guys have any thoughts or questions or want me to explain anything about this.
Do you know if they're still selling that chip?
The Gen MDM?
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like they are. I got mine less than a year ago.
Oh, okay. Because I just found like
fall last year
a bunch of Genocide that are like $40 with games and stuff. I'm like, oh,
nice.
That looks like something I could possibly be getting into. Because you've done that a few times, and I'm always just like, that seems fun. And I've been connecting my aux cord from my Xbox into my recorder that I have, and I've been recording like gunshots and stuff like that from my Xbox into my recorder, and then I'll take like the SD card and like make samples out of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, 'cause I like it going through the recorder because it kind of gives it like a little bit of bit reduction in this sense. Because it's like, I don't know why it does that. It just sounds a little more like digital.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a different sample rate or bit depth. You know, like some of the old school samplers were sampling at like 12 bits, which gives it a gritty sound. Like I think most people are probably recording into live at 24 or even 32 bits. But if you record at a lower bit rate, you're going to get a little bit of like griminess to it. And you can kind of emulate that with the Redux device too.
Yeah, I use Redux a lot, a
The
lot.
bit reduction, like actually, Animus is in the room right now. He made a bit reduction. Now, one of the problems with bit reduction is it's going to get real loud. So I turn the volume down. When you start getting down here, it gets super loud. But he's got a device that balances the volume.
Ooh.
In that.
Drop it in the chat. What if there's a link to it?
Yeah, well, he's got his site Perform module. Let's see if we can Perform. It comes right up because I visit it often.
Oh, heck yeah.
Is it the golden or is it might be a little bit, it might be this actually, this isolation pack. I don't know. If you hear us, man, you can tell us, but I think it's in here. I'll give you the link. This is great stuff anyway, so
yeah. I love the Ableton gang. Because everybody in Ableton just like a bunch of people just share their stuff and just throw it on the website, and they're like, "Hey, here's this."
Yeah,
I love it.
You know, I was using Logic. I started with Pro Tools just because that's what I knew of back in like 2005. It was the only thing I ever really knew of. I eventually got around to Logic, and I loved it. And I was trying to learn Logic on YouTube, really, like kind of the early days of YouTube. And as much as I'd search for Logic stuff, I'd always see Ableton Live stuff pop up all the time. And I had a version of Ableton Live that came with Pro Tools. I think it was Live 4. And I remember it was like, you know, like the free version that they give out. And I didn't understand what the heck it was. It looked like a spreadsheet to me. And I don't even know if it had MIDI back then. It might have just been like audio loops. But it didn't make any sense to me, and it was, to me, I thought it was like a DJing thing. So as I was learning Logic, Ableton Live stuff kept coming up. So I kind of went back to Live, explored it a little, and then next thing I know, I'm rewiring Live into Logic and doing a lot of, that allows you to have like a track in Logic. Like you can set an input, and the input could be Ableton Live. So you can record whatever you're doing live into a track in Logic, which is pretty neat. But after a while, I was like, I'm only using Ableton Live. I'm not even touching Logic. So I just kind of stopped opening Logic. Yeah. And it was really, I think, if it weren't for all the community around Live, I don't know if that would have happened.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Because I started with FL Studio, and then I was like, I hate this thing, and then I changed to Logic, and I don't know, I just felt like Logic was just GarageBand Plus, which it is. That's exactly what it is. But like I was like, I don't like this. And then like I remember using this sampler, the ES whatever it was, and I was like, oh my god, I was like, I can't get into that. That looks so old. I was like, this is not what I'm into. And then I saw Ableton Live. I think I saw Andrew Wong. His first, he was like the first like producer video I saw. And he was like, I use Ableton Live 10. And I was like, that looks slick. And then I found out like Skrillex helped on 10 or 9 or something like that. And I was like, I'm not even into dubstep, but I'm like, if like a company's allowing like a well-known producer that's like top charting to just come in and be like, yo, this is what I think it needs. I was like, that's a company I want to like invest in. So then I didn't even download the demo of Live. I just bought Suite. I just bought it.
Wow.
I was like, all right, here we go. Bought it,
You were
and
convinced.
then yeah, I was convinced. I don't know, and now I'm in love with it. I love that like I can have like 16 laptops and activate them all, and like I don't have to pay like $600 for more activations or whatever. It's awesome. They know that people have a lot of equipment, and I don't know, they take consideration of the consumer, which is cool.
Yeah, I made an instrument in was it EXS 24 or whatever it's called, in Logic. I've got it in Live now. It's the 100-year-old piano. That's like a free download I have. Right, it's my piano. It's 100 years old. I got it from the Salvation Army, and it's over 100 years old. I sampled every note on it, and I did the whole process inside Logic's sampler. I watched some tutorials on how to do it, and then I saw a tutorial on how to use Sampler. I was like, this is a lot easier.
Oh yeah, yeah. You just hit slice, and your life is solved.
It was.
Did it have slice then?
I didn't use Slice to MIDI to do that, but just the layout, you know, like I started learning how to use that, and you know, the rest I guess is history.
Yeah, I love live sampling.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, all of these instruments were made in Sampler. I just convert them to Simpler because if you don't own Sampler, you wouldn't be able to use it. But if you do own Sampler, you can just right-click and you can get in there and do whatever you need to do with it.
I always wonder I think is Simpler just like a simpler version of Sampler? Because I feel like Sampler is simpler than Simpler.
Well, okay, so probably up until was it Live 9.5, I would say, yeah, Simpler is just like a watered down version of Sampler. There's a couple little things you can do in Simpler you can't do in Sampler now, or there were, and now there are a few big ones.
You can't change the root note. I know that in Sampler.
In Simpler,
you can't you can't set the root note, which is I use for 808s. I'll like go in there and like on the other one because you can set root notes.
Here, I just need a sample to show you. So I got some sample here. All right. Now, you're right. You can't set the root note the same way, but what you can do is transpose.
Yeah.
So if I were to put the tuner on here just to see what note I'm actually playing here, it says E flat. Let's go back. So I'm playing a C and I'm getting a B flat. So if I need to, in Sampler, I would set the root note to be C. But here I can just transpose it up too, and now I got the right notes.
I don't know why I've never thought about just throwing a tuner on to check the note.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
I've never thought about that ever. Like ever.
Now, first of all, Simpler has warp in it. That's the big difference now. Is that you can warp. So like, you see how this is like a very rhythmic sound? Let's get that like looping kind of close to what I want. If I turn warp off, when I play a faster sample, it plays back faster, and that means the rhythms are happening faster. If I play a slower note, it plays back very slow, and now the rhythms are slow. So if I play something at the same time on some different notes, the rhythms are all kind of different. Which, you know, could be cool, but if you have a beat, say, so you got like a drum beat, you can, if you play it faster, it's going to raise the pitch but also speed it up. But if you put on warp mode, and then you know, whatever warp mode you want to choose, no matter what note I play, it plays it back at the same speed, so the rhythms are the same. So if I were to play those 3 notes again, they're all moving together.
Oh, thanks.
So that's a really nice feature about Simpler. The other thing I would say is cool about Simpler that you don't get with Sampler really is the control over like the loop length and the like you can kind of do some cool stuff like this, like, and you can manually play around with this, but it doesn't update as fast on Sampler. And the real big thing for me is these controls are you can use a MIDI controller to play with them. So in real time, I could be like doing these sort of. It's not. I don't know if it's fair to call it granular, but it's like almost granular.
Yeah.
And probably even in this case, I'd turn warp off and maybe give a little fade, just to smooth out some of those buzzes. So now I can do these like kind of interesting movements in real time that you can't really do that in sampler.
Yeah, I've seen people make like instruments, and I think that's what I've been like missing is the warp mode. I think I don't ever see that people have warp on when they're making like the tiny cuts, so you could just hold the notes out and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So check this out. This will be a better illustration. So let's just make everything. So I got this beat here. It's from a Casio Rapman keyboard.
Heck yeah.
So right now, right, it's playing this beat. If I play it at a higher pitch, it plays it much faster, right?
Yeah.
Lower pitch, much slower. But if I turn on warp, right now, you'll notice the change here in the display. It says seconds, because that's how long the sample is in seconds. But now, Live will look at it as more like a clip where it's in bars. So I can play it here. I can play it lower. Same BPM.
Huh.
Even faster. So what that means is you can pitch these beats around and still be in time. And it works very well.
That's all. I'm just I got that Ableton Live 10 Power Book.
Yeah,
and
John McGow's.
Yeah, I'm just getting into the warping section of it, and I'm like, now I understand what, like, I didn't even understand how far warping went. Like, the whole program is warping. Like, it's all about the warp. The whole program I'm learning. I'm like, oh, okay.
Sent him some sounds for the release of that book. I think you should be able to download.
Really?
Yeah, there's a couple people that contributed like little packs, and I put together. I forget exactly what, but a bunch of sounds that you get to download.
I gotta check, because I did see it. It said like downloadable content on the book, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. We were gonna do a podcast. It hasn't happened yet. I haven't followed up with him. I guess it was bad timing.
Yeah.
When we were talking about it, and then I gotta reach out to him. He's a cool guy, and him too. He's one of the original guys for me when I was learning live. He had a site called Hobotech. That's like how he does his music. But he did 365 Ableton Live tips. So before we kind of started with the whole talk, you and I were speaking, and you mentioned Gary Vee, right? Being consistent.
Yeah.
So John McGow's did these 365 Ableton Live tips every day during 2010, I guess. And this is right when I was learning live. So I was just following his lead here. Now, let's see. So does he have a list? There was a list somewhere. But you can just click through them here, I guess, too. Back to arrangement. Like, that's a big concept in live, the back to arrangement button. Like, how come I recorded something and I can't hear it? That's like the biggest question. I recorded something in live, but I can't hear it. It's like grayed out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That was the worst moment for me. That was like
probably live 7 or 8, so it's very, it looks a little different.
Yeah.
But, that's this button here now.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, the best thing is like he doesn't like he uses terms, but he doesn't try to confuse you with them. Like when I'm reading this other book called Modern Recording Techniques, and like you could tell it's like meant for college students, because like half the terms I have my laptop next to me when I read this thing, because I can't even, like, some of the words he uses, I'm like, all right, let's go to Google, Search what he said. But like, but this Ableton Live 10 power, like I understand it very well. It's very like just straight to the point,
Yeah.
doesn't try to confuse you.
Yeah, it's practical too. It's like, here's why you would do this. Here's how you can use this in your work.
Yeah. It's like here's what it's used for, but like here's what I use it for, here's what other people use it for, and here's the main purpose. And I'm like, I like that.
Yep. Yeah, I always appreciate it about it. That's how his 365 tips are too. You
Oh,
know,
that's awesome.
it's an older version of Live, but most of them
Same,
still
yeah,
apply.
yeah. It's all about learning the rules to break them. That's what I have learned from this book. It's like here's the rules, but here's this.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the intended purpose, and here's new things you can do, and there's probably stuff you'll think of that no one else has thought of before.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So cool. I hope you guys have been enjoying the pack. If you got a chance to check it out, I think it's a lot of fun. I still have a lot of unfinished business with it myself, like to play with it. But I'm also going to, as I said, add stuff to it too. So keep an eye out on that. Like right now it's 60 sounds. I expect to add some more using the different sound chip, the DAC sound chip, or the one that's like the square wave, and also the noise channels. There might be there's some games that I can access some samples from, I think, or like drum. They're not samples, but they sound like drum samples. And also on top of that, something I haven't mentioned that I think is also incredibly cool. There is a synth that I just got over the summer from Twisted Electronics called the Mega FM. And I have it right here. It's a little tough to show you with the camera right now, but this is a 6-voice, just like it's the same chip. It's got the Yamaha YM2612 chip in there, but it allows you to have like 6 voices of polyphony or to stack them in like unison modes. And it's a much easier way to deal with this Genesis sound chip. So I've been playing around with this, and down the road anyway, I'd like to make some of my own sounds using this. That'll probably wind up in Music Production Club downloads of the future. But this interface makes it just so much easier than working with the Genesis alone, I think. The cool thing about working with the Genesis is you can sequence 6 different voices plus the other sounds too in the chip, and you can actually make like full songs with that. But this one is more like a synth, a normal synth that you can control. And it's great to have a FM synthesizer with all these knobs and faders. Like you don't usually get that on hardware too much. Even like the Yamaha DX7 is like notoriously difficult to program. It's just got like the membranes and buttons and one fader for controlling every parameter. It's a nightmare. I've experimented with it. I've got one. It's not really. I think the battery's dead on it now, but it's not really fun. I never had fun. I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I found it easier to just load things onto it. But what I've learned from using this synth and using the Genesis is just how much like character this chip has. Like things that you barely notice on other synthesizers. Like if you turn the oscillators all the way up on another synthesizer, you don't really get too much distortion, but it does affect like how the sound hits the filter. You can get like a little bit of extra, I guess you're sending more signal to the filter, so sometimes you get a little drive and saturation. With this synth, all of these faders are so sensitive. Turn that off. They're so sensitive that if you turn all of the knobs up for the oscillators or the operators, it's distorting. And it's like really a harsh sound, so you got to really play around with the levels of it. It's very interesting. So I would say, soon enough, keep an eye out for that. And oh, looks like there's a new firmware that I haven't gotten. That's exciting. Nice. But yeah, until then, there's 60 different sounds sampled right off the Sega Genesis for you to play with. And, as I hope you've seen, the 60 sounds that I made are not the end of the story. Just start turning some knobs, and you're going to get much more than just that. And save your own presets. All you got to do is click the save button, and then it'll prompt you to name it whatever you want to name it. You got new presets.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man. Awesome pack.
Cool. Yeah, I hope you like it. I hope I can hear some music you guys make from it too. That's always the big payoff for me, to hear what people actually do with it. I did. I've only, again, like it's been a very busy week for me. Getting this pack out, and then we went back to school, and that's been an interesting experience, to say the least. But last night was the first time I really made any music with this pack, and it was for the new episode of the podcast. I had a conversation with Alina Segal, who is a producer. She's from Stockholm, and she moved to Los Angeles, but she's back in Stockholm now due to the pandemic. But anyway, the opening music that you'll hear is all made with the Genesis stuff, and I was just having so much fun last night playing with these sounds. I don't know if it's because I grew up playing so much Sega Genesis, but and Nintendo too. Like, those chiptune sounds just sort of like blast me back into being 12 years old. It's incredible. So I have so much fun playing with these specific sounds, and I'm excited to hear what you guys do with it.
With your Ableton effects on top of it, it really reminds me of the 90s Sierra games.
What games are those?
Like Quest for Glory, King's Quest, Police Quest, all the computer games.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the effects take it to a new level. Like, it is a lot of fun to like hook up the Sega Genesis and like play it directly, but it's also like a lot of work. It's, for me, like, programming this way, these are the same controls that are on the Mega FM synthesizer, but the numbers and having the sliders is just. And I also think that things don't always work right. Also, when I'm sending MIDI to the Genesis, like, things get funny a lot of times, and it's also kind of tricky to save your patches too. So I've made like little songs or little loops on the Genesis, but then the next time I load it up, it sounds totally different. And sometimes it doesn't even make sound. I have to like turn it on and off, and so it's a very complicated form of synthesis to begin with. And then the fact that like it can get a little glitchy, it's like you don't know if it's that you're doing something wrong or there's something not working right. And that can be a little difficult. So I'm very happy to just have like all of these different racks that are gonna work every time I use them. But cool. I think maybe we'll call it a day from here. Unless there's any other questions, anything else. But yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for the presentation today. I don't have any questions.
Cool.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm really glad you guys made it.
Yeah, I'm about to download all these and mess around with them.
Awesome.
Yeah, same here.
Nice. Yeah, let me know if you get anything going. I'd love to hear it.
Heck yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun. And good luck with everything else. And we're doing another one of these next Sunday night. That is, I think, the 20th. And the plan is, I actually wanted to, I went into it a little bit today, but I wanted to talk a bit about just like using envelopes. Like we were talking about looping envelopes and just how you can use those for sound design and synthesis, and maybe even get into like the Max for Live envelope follower, which is pretty awesome too. So it'll be like a little bit of that kind of stuff. But again, if like you guys have questions or anything you want to talk about, we can definitely get into that too. You know, I like having the topic for the class, but also open it up to like whatever you guys want to know too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I definitely like that.
Nice. Well, have a good rest of the day. Enjoy the weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon.
All right, see you, man.
Alrighty,
Thank you.
thanks. See you, fellas.
All right.
See you.
Take care, everybody.